Welcome to the discussion session of Tuesday, September 26th. We will start with a review of the agenda for the commission meeting. Manager McGill, if you don't mind, walk us through it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight's agenda will have the consideration of final approval of a land development plan for Black Oak Hill for property located at 397 Old Gilchrist Road. The developer proposes to construct 10 single-family attached homes and renovate one existing single-family home. We'll also have the consideration of a development agreement and stormwater operations and maintenance agreement with the SIGA LLC for the proposed land development project for Black Oak Hills. We'll have the consideration to purchase a greens mower for the golf course. You'll hear more about that in discussion. We'll have consideration for the award of the contract for the 2023-2026 through 2026 sidewalk, snow and ice removal. And then also consideration to award change orders to the firing range penthouse contract related to ductwork, mechanical and sealing work. And again, you'll hear a brief update on that during discussion session.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda, comprehensive plan, community branding. Ian.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. As part of the comprehensive plan update project, one of the tasks that we wrote into the RFP was updating the municipal slogan, which is currently community with character. And as part of the project, our prime consultant, Patrick MTR, engaged with consultants from Yard and Company, a national firm that does this work. And we have Joe Nickel and Lane Ferguson from Yard and Company joining us here virtually via Zoom. And they have a little presentation they're going to walk through, and then I can wrap things up after they're done. So I will hand it over to Joe and Lane.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, my name is Lane Ferguson. I am an experienced and brand designer for Yard and Company. Joe is listening in. He is the founder and principal of Yard. We've been really excited to get to work on this project. Wanted to kind of share where we're currently at on the slogan and identity, but as well as engage you all as stakeholders in Mount Lebanon and hear your perspective on this community slogan, as well as just kind of hear next steps. So we just have a little bit of time today, and so I'm going to try to get as much information out of you all as possible during that short amount of time, but please ask questions if you have any. But just to walk kind of through what our work is as part of this Sin Lebo project, or I'm sorry, Sin Lebo project, is working on this community slogan. Currently, Mount Lebanon has a strong municipal brand that's used pretty widely, whether that's from government communications, but as well as we've seen this used in the built environment through signage. And just the government, I feel like, has used this really well. But more so, the slogan, a community with character, that has been around for quite some time, is what we've been tasked with updating into something that's a little bit more relevant for the future of the community. And just to show you where this is really predominantly used at the moment, and this is the homepage of the city website. And so you can see this being front and center as a piece here, but more so than that, a community slogan has that opportunity to not just be that first sense of what you see whenever you're looking at the city, but really we want it to be something that the community can live by, can aspire to, and can really create a source of civic pride in the community as well. What we're not doing is we're not recreating the logo from Mount Lebanon. That's not what we're tasked with today, but what we are doing is really trying to understand the values and ideas of the community that Mount Lebanon is and wants to be, and create a slogan that really represents where it's going and really where it's headed. To start with that, we started creating a brand architecture analysis to better understand how current branding is used throughout the community, whether that's internally or externally. And so, like I said, that branding that currently exists from the municipal standpoint, but there's also a few others, whether it's the police and fire department having their own branding, or the Mount Lebanon magazine, which is widely spread to really help share news that's going on in the city. There is a brand architecture that exists. And then more so in the built environment, we even see how that can be used elsewhere. Like I said, even in some of your gateway signage, we see a lot of that municipal branding used, but even start to see community members creating their own sorts of art and different murals that really show a different type of, maybe a different side of Mount Lebanon, maybe more colors and vibrancy. And then even from an organizational standpoint, we've seen the Mount Lebanon Partnership logo and how that's been used. And so we call all those parts part of a brand architecture and how somebody understands the community, how someone's interacting with it. And it all works within some sort of system, whether that's intentional or not. And so as we're creating this analysis right now, thinking through how current branding is used, whether that's through community information, different departments, different community events, or even from a visit tourism standpoint, we see this, you see how this community slogan can really help touch all of those different departments or uses and why that's such an important branding piece to your community. But as we've also started going through this brand architecture piece, we've noticed a future potential need of maybe this community place brand. Whereas Mount Lebanon's current branding is owned and operated by the municipal and government, this is really a community that people are proud to be in, and we want people to be in. We want people to be proud to be from Mount Lebanon. We believe people are, from what we've heard. And so how can we give them a brand that they can have more ownership of, where we can start seeing that on businesses take that and run with it, see that on shirts. And so we're going to talk a little bit about maybe what we see as some next step recommendations. And so especially as we think about how you implement a comprehensive plan, I think this is one of the greatest first steps that a city can take, is really starting to think about what is their actual brand of a city. And when I say that, I don't really just mean the logo of the city, but really what are those opportunities that someone can take on and really create that identity of ownership and really want to be a part of what's happening in the community. And so, like I said, we really think a good next step for this comprehensive plan is to help implement it through implementing what we would call a place brand for Mount Lebanon. And really what we mean by that is it's the principles and assets that form the place brand. It's a strategy to strengthen Mount Lebanon's sense of place, create synergy between the businesses there and the community and visitors and how they talk and think about the city every day. And so, yes, there's that need for that municipal brand, but there's also that need for how someone interacts with the city and thinks about Mount Lebanon and really helps build that sense of pride with it. An example we gave to the community engagement focus group when we first started tackling this project is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they've done a really good job of identifying a place brand and really utilizing that and letting the community take ownership of it. This is Tulsa's municipal logo, and so you see their city seal as well as how they use the branding. And so this is more their official government logo, even on top of City Hall here. But what they did was created a city flag that's not only used by the city, but it's something that you'll see over all businesses that use it. Homes will have this flying in front of their home, in front of their house, as well as this TUL look. And this is a little bit more of a, to them, a brand that fits where Tulsa's headed, as well as that it's a little bit more authentic to the people that are currently there and the creative nature that's happening in Tulsa. What I think is so cool about this example, though, is what started out as a flag has really become this iconic sense of brand for Tulsa and how they use it. So anything from a business selling a deck of cards that uses this branding, a local brewery turning that into a beer, even having hats and t-shirts that represent that. It's really become a source of pride for people in Tulsa to represent this brand and everything that it represents to them. We even see that it's starting to represent in the built environment, whether it's through public art, and really doing maybe less vibrant places, making those more colorful, but also, again, highlighting what are the whole principles about this brand, showing the creativeness of Tulsa and allowing that to really reflect in the built environment by adding this public art that better reflects that. So in Tulsa example, their flag and place brand are identifying the city's history, geography, and beauty. Community members and businesses have taken this and made it their own and creating more pride and uniqueness to Tulsa. And so, yes, that current brand, the municipal brand, it works and is really relevant to what they need as a government, but they got to create this place brand that's really helping take Tulsa to the next level, encouraging people that are already there to be proud to be from Tulsa, but not even that, encouraging people to want to move to Tulsa, to open up business in Tulsa, and really creating a brand around that. That all being said, today, what we're only focused on doing is addressing Mount Lebanon's slogan, but we just wanted to take you guys back a little bit to show what we think as we've gone through this brand architecture analysis of what we think would be a natural next step as we go through this slogan process. And so this is what we want to talk to you guys about today and get your feedback on is what's the primary role of the slogan. But just to quickly show you kind of what we've been asking different stakeholders and community members throughout the Mount Lebanon community. We've asked them questions about what do you like about this slogan? What do you not like about this? What do you think outsiders know about Mount Lebanon? What do you think of when they hear it? What symbols and colors represent Mount Lebanon? What do you feel would be important for a visitor to know? And what do you feel are misconceptions or negative perceptions about Mount Lebanon? So as we go through this question today, and we would love to hear what you guys have to say about it, about the primary role of the slogan. Think through those aspects as well about all of Mount Lebanon, not just the slogan itself. But what do people think about Mount Lebanon? What do you want them to think about when they think about the community of Mount Lebanon? And so as I think about the slogan, this is that first impression for a lot of people about what they'll think about now when they think about Mount Lebanon. We want that to really resonate in people's minds. But we also want it to be a rallying point for the community to be proud to be a part of this community and really get to be a part of it. So I'm going to stop talking now and hand it over to you all to answer this question for us of what do you feel is the primary role of this slogan? That's going to help us better utilize you guys in this project.
So the question is, what's the primary role of the slogan, or was it what do you like or not like about the current slogan?
What is the primary role of the slogan? And you can answer that as you wish, as far as how you'd like to use the slogan. And like I said, we've asked the community a number of questions. Feel free to include some of these in your answers if anything's coming at you. But I also realize we don't have as much time as we have had in other focus groups to have everyone answer every single one of these questions. So I think that the biggest question we're trying to get answered from you all is, what do you all feel like is the primary role that this slogan will serve?
And I think in addition to that, well, not only the primary role, but what's the image of the community that you want to project out? Because the slogan's going to go with our logo on a lot of stuff, and there is that supplemental branding as well that can be a supplement to that. But as Lane said at the beginning, we're not changing the cedar tree logo, and in a lot of places the community with character slogan goes in conjunction with the municipal logo, so it's going to be out there. So since we're updating the slogan, what's the image of the community that the commission wants to project?
I got 3 words.
Good.
That's all I got. Energetic, dynamic, and influential. Those are the 3 that came to me as I was going through listening.
Well,
The 3 I had.
follow it, this isn't quite the right word, but like trendy, up and coming, something that addresses that. Attractive,
I hate trendy.
not that word, I don't like
Okay,
that
I
word.
hate that word.
It means.
I mean, it's kind of it's a traditional community that can move into, it's good tradition. It's good architecture that can carry us forward into all the next centuries.
This is why I'm not in advertising. I came up with
No.
livable, nice, pleasant,
Livable, nice.
family-oriented community. That's
Hello, go to sleep.
right. Not my forte.
What was yours again, Andrew? Dynamic?
Energetic, dynamic, and influential.
Okay.
Again, I'm just thinking about this right more broadly. It's like, as I think about how do we want to project our story, right? And frankly, when I'm out speaking in other communities, in the region, they perceive Mount Lebanon as influential and dynamic and doing cool things. They want, so how do we kind of take that core vision of Mount Lebanon is doing a lot of great things, and there's a lot of good things happening here. How do we blend that into, and take more ownership of that vision and that energy and build it into a brand that I frankly, I like a community with character. Yeah, that's just me. I think it's a solid tagline that speaks to kind of a presence that Mount Lebanon has that most communities don't have, right? It's a very solid, respectable, but I don't want to say pretentious, but it's upstanding. And I think that the current tagline says that. So I think for me, the only thing that's missing is that more energetic, youthful dynamism that might be lost in the current story.
And scroll down the place to be, but that's, again, back to, well, like, again, say it's funny. It's the best, it's just answering the question.
I think it's a welcoming community too. And I think that that's something that we always want to put forth because, there's a lot of strength in diversity. And as the population diversifies and more people move into Mount Lebanon, I think we want to champion that. we're one of the few communities around here that has lots of multifamily housing, as well as smaller homes, larger homes, the whole gamut. And it makes it a great community to gather lots of different thinking together to come up with where we want to be.
The word welcome is for sure what we've heard most from a lot of our focus groups and engagement. And as far as, but I'll also add, I think on the other side of that, from a misconception side, kind of what we heard is maybe there's a perception that it's not as welcoming as it actually is. So it's something we've been analyzing, as well as how can we make sure to, like you said, champion that welcoming atmosphere and spirit, and make sure that wording is correct in that too.
It's also perceived as a safe community, because it is. We have great public
Yeah.
services. And safety is important to families.
Either really have really good eyes or there's a mirror in here somewhere. I used just 3 words and I put down safe, vibrant, and welcoming.
There we go, see? Great minds.
Anybody else have any other thoughts? Well, any thoughts?
I personally like community with character. I think it's pretty
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, I was gonna speak to that. I really like the current slogan because character has that like integrity, you know, definition, as well as it speaks to our historic district. So it's both like a person and it's a place. But maybe we can come up with something better. I don't know. Show us what you got.
Do you all feel like the community, would you, if you would ask a typical resident if they knew what the slogan was, do you think they would know it's a
Oh, they
community?
would not know.
No,
Nope.
They would not
I
know.
don't think so.
I suspect if we have a new slogan and we ask that question 5 years from now, we have the same people to say yes or no.
And I think that's,
But
sorry, I was saying, I think that's where a big piece of that place brand comes into as that next step, is not just something that, you know, the government uses, but something that people can live by and aspire to and be proud of and want to talk about. And, you know, you see it more so than just on the city's website.
Well, I guess that my question there is, yeah, and I understand that from a large, you know, community like Tulsa. It's a neat story that they're telling with that brand and that place brand. But in smaller communities, my instinct, and I could be completely wrong, but my instinct is that the community brand is largely overtaken by the school
That's
brand,
what I was gonna say.
right? It's the school mascot, right? That's oftentimes, at least in my experience, that community's place brand. In ways that maybe we should think of other things, but that seems like there's so much space claimed there already that I wonder, you know, how you compete with that.
Yeah, that's something we've definitely been talking about as well, and with this project. And I would say there's definitely a space for that school brand to be using that place brand piece. A lot of times what we talk about when we really mean about branding, though, is how is it actually helping you make decisions as the community you are. If we say we're this, you know, if the words we're going to talk about are welcoming, safety, and vibrant, well, if that's our brand, we have to live by those characters, or we're not living up to that brand promise. And so that's where that brand really starts to take shape, and it can be used a lot more than just, you know, we say a slogan and the logo. It's just an asset of what that brand is trying to build. But I think overall, definitely there's aspects of a school brand where that fits in with everything. But at the end of the day, is that helping the city grow into helping create that sense of civic pride, to help you make decisions in the built environment, and so on.
Oh, I see.
And one thing I'll add too, I know that from looking through census data, and I agree with Commissioner Flint's point about the school brand taking up a lot of space, but as we were thinking about this through the comp plan process, there's a significant number of households in the community that don't have kids in school. And while they still may identify with the school district, we felt like there was some space to say, hey, you can express civic pride in your community without necessarily being associated with the school.
Sure.
I don't remember the exact stat for how many, but the percentage of.
No, it makes sense, right? I'm not saying it doesn't. It seems like the smaller the town gets, the bigger the school brand becomes relative. And I don't know where that tipping point is, but it's an interesting kind of thought exercise to go through to say, yeah, how do you build a story? Because I think Mount Lebanon as a community does have a good brand, broadly speaking. So the question is, how do you synthesize it in a way that it's going to tell a visual story that people want to put on a flag or make a beer, which is cool, right? I mean, that was a cool brand, the way they did that. But how do you find that balance? You know, the smaller the community, it does become more challenging.
Definitely. Ian, how are we doing on time?
We have about 10 minutes left if there's any other input that you all want from the commission. I can speak a little bit to next steps and where we're going from here. This is really one of the last major pieces of public input that the Yard and Company folks are taking. As they mentioned, we've been through multiple rounds of focus groups talking about the slogan as well as other aspects of the comprehensive plan. And I think within the next few weeks, Yard's going to be working on putting together some draft ideas for potential slogans to be reviewed by focus groups. There may be some public outreach as well, possibly in conjunction with some other public events that are coming up. And really, the timeline we're looking at overall is the goal was to get the final comprehensive plan adopted by the end of this year, which means the December commission meeting. There's a mandatory 45-day public comment review period prior to adoption of a new comprehensive plan. So that would commence in late October. So the goal was then to have the consultants from Patrick come to one of the October discussion sessions, run through the recommendations of the plan with the commission prior to that public comment review period, so that then the commission could see them all, give some feedback before we go off of that public comment. Staff and focus groups have reviewed the initial draft of recommendations, so they're in process right now. So there's a lot of things that are going to be coming together very quickly over the next few months.
When will we have another like update or input touch point?
October, one of the two October discussion sessions will have a fairly lengthy presentation on the recommendations of the plan.
If we do have a little bit more time, I was gonna ask one more question, if that's okay.
Sure.
And to that point, just kind of talk about the school branding piece. I think we're one audience that doesn't necessarily hit is the visitor coming into town. And I know the schools in Mount Lebanon are a big attraction for people to move there because the great school system. But think about that visitor that may be coming in just for the day or for coming in for a programming or an event. But what do you feel would be important for a visitor to know about Mount Lebanon? And what would maybe differentiate Mount Lebanon from other similar cities in the region?
Because it has an uptown. It has
Yeah,
a, it
couple
has
business
a
districts,
central
yeah.
business district and most suburbs don't, and we do. And we don't have a mall instead of a central business district. We have a very small mall. We have a central business district. And we're very,
It's a varied community programming, depending when somebody comes in, there's First Friday, or there's the programming at the library, or the artist market coming up next weekend. There's a lot of stuff going on.
a fabulous library.
Well, programming, at the library, the historical.
Historical
Society, they-
Society's
yeah,
right
right
there,
there,
all of
right.
it's right there. Walk to it.
And Lane, if I can steal the screen share from you for a minute, there was one other thing that I wanted to share here. So, and the reason why some of this stuff is important is going back to our comprehensive plan surveying that we did. We asked, where did you live prior to moving to Mount Lebanon? And only 10% of respondents said that they've always lived in Mount Lebanon. So we're looking at this survey question result, I think we had close to 2,000 responses in this survey that, a different community in Allegheny County and a different state were our two biggest ones. So we have kind of a local draw of people within Allegheny County that move here. And then we have a fairly significant, almost 1/3 nationwide draw of people moving from different states to our community. And the other question of how long have you lived in Mount Lebanon? Just a little over 35% said 20+ years, but more than that, a plurality of responses were the under 10 years, which totaled more than the 20+ years. So we do have a lot of residents that have moved here very recently. And we are continuing to draw new people in. I know every year at budget time, the finance director talks about how many homes we've turned over in the last year. And it's been a significant number in the 500 to 600 range over the last 5 years or so, that we do turn over a lot of homes. And that is our primary means of drawing people to the community, is our attractiveness. So our thinking is that this brand architecture and this slogan update and all that will continue to be how we put our best face forward to continue to draw in the next generation of residents.
There's lots of stuff to do here. Otherwise, that's another bland slogan. But I'm sure families coming in going, the kids have stuff to do and, a very wide range of activities for people. We've been such a great focus group for you. Anything else you have?
Yeah, that's been great. That is all I have for you all. Like I said, like Ian's already mentioned, we'll be working on the slogan and have some options to share with everyone here the next few weeks, as well as just the next step recommendations.
All right, okay, well, thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. Next on the list, the greens mower. Colin and Dave Dillon, you guys come down. Great, thank you.
Good evening. I'm here with,
Not mentioning the golf course when we're talking about that.
it's okay, you didn't mention tennis or ice center or all those other things either.
Yeah, I know. I thought.
We didn't take it personally.
I start mentioning some rack and I don't mention all the rack facilities, and
That's
swim center's
too
gonna be left
vast.
out. There's just so many.
Well, anyway, I'm here with golf course manager Colin Agster to talk to you tonight about some options for replacement for the golf course greens mower. I think you've all seen his memo. We've sort of narrowed it down to 3 options in the resolution tonight. And I'll let Colin review those 3 options and then open it up for questions.
All right, the 3 mowers we have looked at are the Jacobson GP 400, which we talked about 2 weeks ago, which is the gas mower. Comes in at just under $48,000. Runs on a Brinkton Stratton 17.7 horsepower gas mower, and it's hydraulic systems control everything, the control arm, the mower, everything. So you do have issues that come with leaks on the gas powered mower, which are a very large issue for the golf course.
You don't want leaks.
Don't want leaks. Hydraulic fluid will kill the grass basically immediately, and expensive to fix. Hoses break all the time. Not a good situation.
Sounds like you're steering us towards electric.
Hey, I would love the electric. The hybrid mower is the Toro E-Triflex Greensmaster that we looked at, the 3360. Comes in just under $68,000. And that has a 14 horsepower Kawasaki engine. And it runs on a 4 battery system, and that will control, like I said, control arm, the lifting, all the cutting will be done electrically. So there's no hydraulics involved whatsoever in the hybrid gas mower, or the hybrid.
Okay.
The all electric is the Toro E-Triflex 3370. Comes in at just over $75,000. That will run on 8 Samsung lithium ion batteries. Big pro on that, it's unbelievably quiet. The hybrid's also quiet, the electric is all electric's even quieter. No hydraulics whatsoever, don't have to worry about any leaks. And I mean, there are some drawbacks, but for the most part, it's faster, it's, obviously cleaner. Fuel costs, none whatsoever, hydraulics never an issue. We have to look at a little bit of infrastructure of adding a dedicated charging line into the maintenance building, but that's not.
Batteries, right? Plug it in.
Yes, has to be charged every night. It takes about 8 to 9 hours to charge.
It needs a dedicated circuit on 120, is that?
Yes.
Just dedicated?
Yep.
It can't be shared.
Correct.
You have to run another one.
Yeah, that's what municipal electrician said, $1,500 to $1,800,
Yeah.
depending on where we want to park it, that should be good.
The same thing we did when we switched to an electric Zamboni. We had to, run a new circuit for that specific purpose.
It's like I had to do in my house for electric cars.
Colin, you mentioned, for instance, about, gallon of gas a day, what for repair costs, you mentioned about the concern about the hydraulic fluid leaking.
Yeah.
What sort of number?
That could be, depends on how large of a break you have, or if you have to run a whole hydraulic hose, or if there's other issues that come, it could be $500 for an easy repair, it could be multiple thousands of dollars for a large repair.
Any kind of like, got gas a little bit easy, okay, a gallon a day times X number of days of mowing. What for the hydraulics, you throw kind of an estimated number of, call it annual maintenance cost?
Probably $2,000 to $3,000. It all depends. Breaks, we could have a whole year without a hose break. We could break 5 hoses a year. It's just kind of wear and tear and what happens if you hit a rock, if you hit a stump, anything like that.
Is the charging time a problem? Does it hold a charge long enough that you can?
Oh,
really-
absolutely.
So you're not worried about that?
No, if the greens get cut first thing in the morning right away, takes no more than an hour or two.
Okay,
And then for the greens mower, that's it for the day for the greens mower, unless you have some trimming to do in some other areas. Greens mower is just the greens.
Any difference from a maintenance standpoint in terms of in-house repairs versus needing to send it?
Yes, so with the gas powered motor, we can do a lot of the, minor and not major repairs in-house. Jason, the superintendent's very comfortable with it. Township mechanic's very comfortable with it. Electric mowers, we will probably be outsourcing most of the repairs.
Again, back to a dollar guesstimate on that.
Well, the thing with the electric mowers is they're fairly new. They've only been out for about 2 or 3 years on the market. The salesmen and the mechanics for the dealers, they're kind of non-committal on numbers with the electric mowers. They have, battery replacement prices and repairs. They're not too familiar with it because they've only been out for 2 years. They're not into large in-depth repairs yet.
did they come with any guarantee, the electric, or
Uh,
warranty?
2-year warranty on the mower itself, 5-year warranty on the batteries.
How long do we typically keep the greens mower?
Greens mower, we replace every 5 years, and then that mower turns into the new T mower. And then we've been doing that for quite a while now.
And then what happens to the T-mower? You
The
don't
old
know.
one, well, since we've been using Jacobson gas mowers for the last 20 years or so, we've kept them and we've used them for parts, for breakdowns and stuff like that.
Sure,
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and that's the large issue you're gonna have with, if we get go with electric mower.
yeah. No parts.
5 years down the line,
Yeah.
no parts and most likely replacement batteries at some point,
Right.
which are costly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you're saving on fuel.
Correct.
What do you spend on fuel again?
Well, it's only about 1 to 1.5 gallons a day.
Oh.
So not a lot on fuel, which I
But
mean,
a gallon a day is 30
Yeah.
gallons. Yeah,
correct.
a month.
And the hybrids, you get only up to about 20% fuel savings, so you're not saving a lot of money with that.
Interesting.
Well, then you just do the math though, right, on that, it's, because I did this with, when I got my bike, I was like, okay, how much do I have to pedal before I actually save money? It's a long way to go.
Yeah, I figured gas is $4 a gallon, 20% of the savings is 80 cents. The $20,000 differential between the two mowers times, divided by the 80 cents, that's 25,000 days of mowing.
Yes. And we,
They're gonna mow every
they
day.
go out every day pretty much between March and early November. And then they might only go out once or twice a week after that come winter time.
Right.
And then obviously weather permitting.
Well, I guess my other question is, again, as we start going down this. Right, for me, it's not just one mower,
Mhm.
right, it's
Right.
a transition to electric in general.
Yes.
And how do we think about that, right, at the golf course, right? What other equipment is going to need to be there? What infrastructure needs to be built out, right? So that we're not spending $1,800 every time.
Yeah.
Right, we're doing it once. We have a plan for that migration over the next however many years, right, as we transition equipment out.
Yeah.
Because at some point, right, the scale is where you get a lot of value. Right, one electric mower is extra work. 5 electric mowers and an electric car and an electric, become just routine, right, course of business, and there's an efficiency gain. So how does this, have you thought about, okay, commission says, yeah, we're gonna get the electric mower. Have you thought about kind of what next steps become?
Yeah, well, I've talked to Fire Chief Nick, who's not here tonight, but he has said if you get multiple electric vehicles in that building, you have to put in a fire suppression system. With one, you're fine. Start getting multiple, you're gonna have to get a pretty large fire suppression system. Battery replacement costs, they said they've been non-committal on numbers, but they're pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Toro's $10,000 to $12,000 on replacement battery. And the Jacobs we looked at was $15,000 to $17,000 on replacement battery. Right now, they don't even make an electric fairway mower, and that's gonna be something we're looking at in the next few years. So, I mean, I'm sure they will in the few years, but right now, they're not even on the market.
So we would have this mower, you don't foresee any addition here?
Oh, I mean, we certainly would love, electric utility carts in the future for sure. Golf carts, 5 years down the line, we look at golf carts again. We would need a whole new building for electric golf carts, a large building too we have 34 golf carts, you need 4 to 8 feet per cart for a charging station for golf carts.
Well, but that becomes interesting to me, at least to kind of think through, right? Is that if you say, okay, electric carts in 5 years, and electric mowers, right? Now we have to, because do I want to put in a fire suppression, thing for 2 electric mowers? No. But for 2 electric mowers and 34 electric carts, sure, right? That becomes logical again. So how do we understand, right? That maybe this is just a step to take to learn. But how do we start building beyond that and understanding kind of the next 5 years to get us where ultimately we're going to be closer to electric in general?
So I remember a conversation, I believe it was with Ian, about transitioning more and more to electric through the whole township. And that there was thinking along these lines of where we start, and where we go next, and sort of a progression. Ian, can you talk about that at all? Because I'm wondering where this fits in. I mean, rather than just saying, let's pick this, I mean, maybe it's better to have something else that we start with. I don't know.
So what I will say is during the comprehensive plan process, we've talked with our consultants about including in the plan kind of a flow chart of decision-making and sort of best practices on converting to electric items and vehicles and things like that. So obviously, we don't have the full final comp plan approved and done yet, but that is a component that we have requested to be a part of that to help us with that future decision-making.
Anything that, given we have to make a decision tonight,
I-
anything you can,
Here's what I can say, because I've done some research myself on it. Philadelphia did a very comprehensive, very lengthy, electric vehicle conversion plan. The general recommendations in their plan were, build infrastructure first to support it, start small, and then kind of work your way up. That the smaller vehicles, the less frequently used ones, the ones that aren't used in 24/7 operations, the ones that aren't used in pursuit, things like that, are the easier ones to make conversions with first, and that's usually the good place to start because that's the low hanging fruit. The harder ones are your, snow plows that have to run longer than 24 hours if there's a consistent snowstorm and don't have time to recharge. Your police vehicles that have to be used in pursuit that, from my knowledge, they're still working out the kinks of being able to have enough power in the car to operate a laptop and lights plus the vehicle at the same time. My understanding is that the current police cars have extra gas power to run the vehicle operates electrically, but there's extra gas power to power the other stuff in the car. So the technology is not there yet on some of the things. My understanding with big dump trucks is that there's not enough power to drive and run hydraulics at the same time. So if you have a truck that has salt on it, you would have to park to dump the salt and couldn't dump the salt while you were driving because there's not enough power in the car. But generally speaking, since you have to make a recommendation tonight, the plans that I've read have all said start small, but also make sure you have, you know, the infrastructure in place to support it, because just buying an electric vehicle without the infrastructure, you're gonna, like, you can't use it. You can use it once and then you have the infrastructure to recharge it. So
And the infrastructure isn't just the idea of running electrical lines, it's how to fix these things.
there's that too, yes.
I mean, we have managed with electric Zambonis for years. I guess that's starting small. The
Yeah.
fact that we have two to alternate is key.
Mhm.
When one breaks, the other's ready to go into service. We haven't had anything major other than batteries that we've had to replace. Everything else, our regular mechanic has been able to repair. The Zambonis translate to greens mowers, I couldn't say for sure, but I think our first foray into electric vehicles has gone pretty smoothly.
Mhm.
And it was, you know, critical in my mind indoors to not.
Yeah,
have
to not be running
emissions
gasoline.
Sure,
In a
Yeah.
building that people occupy.
right.
But anyway, for what it's worth, that has gone very well.
Right?
So visualizing a Zamboni going down the fairway, but.
Well, and an honest question, right? I mean, do you guys feel like if we said an electric mower, you could pick it up and make it work?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And our superintendent has said he loved electric mower. Absolutely loved it. Said it's fast, it's quiet, and it's very efficient.
Great. Well, I'm in support. I mean, I think if we're not gonna start here, I don't know where we are gonna start. It's such a low risk item. I mean, what, we don't cut the grass one day? Sorry.
Golfers might.
We're out.
Very.
Yeah, like,
Eat those
we
words.
might find another, you know, lawn mower to cut the grass.
Well, we have
Right.
the old one, which was a
Exactly.
tees mower, which still can be converted back into a green.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they had to.
So given that there are three possibilities, Mr. Green, which of the three did you?
Oh,
think
the lowest, I mean, the lowest price electric, so that's the,
Or-
or that they suggested
33.7.
75K, yeah.
Other advantages there is Griffith is local, so that electric unit, we would be able to get service likely or.
Easier than
faster.
Baker out of Ohio.
Yeah, so that's something good to consider. Our least favored would be the hybrid because of the longer lead time. And if the goal is to eliminate gas, then let's
Minimal saving in general.
go the whole
Yeah,
way, yeah.
It's more expensive than what are you really getting? Is it, you're still getting emissions, you're still getting some of the.
Well, it's slightly less expensive than the electric, but to go all electric seems like the better way to go in our mind.
So just for scorekeeping, we will pay for the,
All electric.
that'd be the.
75K Toro.
33.7.
3370, okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
We've got the
I
money for
mean,
it.
I'm trying to see if we have three votes for any of particular of these three options. So I have two votes for the 3370 unit. So Commissioner Bell and Commissioner Flynn, do you have a preference?
Assuming we have funding for it. I'm
Yeah,
okay.
assuming we have money for it. That's the-
Okay.
Let's keep
We got a thumbs up. We got a
Agree with the answer,
thumbs up
but I
in the
feel
direction of
like
finance.
better, but-
So,
So, one more, yes, may I ask one more question now?
please.
This was a bit of a, process to have this conversation. How do we avoid the process and do this on a more disciplined basis going forward? This is a broad question. maybe
Yeah,
to the manager.
I did make an attempt to do that, that failed. But nevertheless, going forward, direction to staff will just be to make sure that we are providing all options and associated costs to the commission. So that you will have all of the information on which to make the decision. And we will have to provide you with additional information, as Ian was
Yeah.
alluding to.
Yeah, I think
You know,
that's important.
This is relatively low hanging fruit in
Right.
terms of infrastructure required, and from a maintenance standpoint. But when we transition into talking about police vehicles and those types of things,
Fire engines.
there's also, you can go on the internet and find just about anything.
Right.
There's a study that was done out of Harvard that says unless you drive an electric vehicle between 28 and I think it was 58,000 miles a year, it's really not any more environmentally friendly because of everything that goes into the production of that vehicle and the batteries themselves and all of those things.
Yeah.
So again, this is a journey.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of our first step, but going forward, for vehicle purchases, and it's also where they're available, as you also heard, some of the vehicles that we purchase aren't even currently offered as electric. So
Right, so you'll get us an electric option when it's available.
we'll get you, yes.
And we'll-
Hybrid will get you
oh,
gas, hybrid, and electric.
awesome.
Right.
And
So you've
have
got-
staff identify pros, cons, and any, the other thing, as more communities move in this direction,
Mhm.
we will also, I'll say, tap into our neighbors
Sure.
to see if anybody has any experience and if they've made any purchases.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that, I think there's another community that's sort of transitioned, West Mifflin is sort of at the forefront of, I'll say, commitment.
Yep.
To electric vehicles. As a matter of fact, they were on a webinar that I attended that had Duquesne Light on it as well. They're kind of the, I'll say, first out in terms of purchasing related to electric vehicles. So after a couple of years, we'll have the benefit of their experience. As with anything, pros and cons.
All righty, 1, 2, at least 3, 4 votes in favor of the 3370 and the questions. Who's reading that?
Me.
All right, okay, so right,
So I
we
got
said 4. All right, cool.
Just
All right.
read all three.
I will.
Just one is fine.
Just one.
Exactly.
Well,
All right, commission have any final questions for on the Queens mowers?
Thanks for doing this extra research.
Yes,
Yes,
thank
very,
you.
very fascinating.
Thank you very much. We appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure.
All righty, next, fire range update and change order. Gateway Engineering will present this information. Hold down.
Hi, how are you?
Is
Good, how are you?
Be online for this.
Dan's gonna be online. I'm gonna be sharing my screen to pull the memo up.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, I was confused. I thought I wasn't able to talk. That's good. Okay. So we're just here tonight to discuss the firing range. As the commission is aware, we've had some issues in bringing the project to completion, mostly due to a ceiling that collapsed near the completion of the project, and the resultant effects of that happening. So we've been back and forth with the solicitor, the contractors, and everybody else involved in the project to try to get it off of doing nothing and get it completed. So what we're here to present to you tonight is 3 change orders that will help bring the project to completion. The first thing that we did before we came to you tonight was we actually had to go in and actually check the condition of the ductwork that services the mechanical systems in the building. And with the ceiling collapse, there was damage to the ductwork. It's not repairable. It's going to need replaced. It's in a confined area, and there's a fair amount of manpower that's necessary to get in and actually remove the existing duct and replace it with new duct. So that's the first part of the effort. So once the ductwork is completed, there will then be some upgrades to the mechanical systems. After the ceiling collapsed, there was some review of the mechanical systems by the mechanical engineer of record. He recommended a duct silencer, a control damper, an exhaust fan, and some additional controls on the systems. And those were additional items that they felt would prevent a full operation of the system, although it, in everybody's opinion, the full operation of the system shouldn't have brought down the ceiling. They feel that this is another safeguard that could be put in to the system to shut it down, deal with some of the issues that we're concerned about going forward here with the reinstall. So these are additional mechanical repairs. Now, both of these have been reviewed with the architect and his mechanical engineer. We've had them reviewed by an independent mechanical engineer that we consult with, who's assisted us since the ceiling collapse on the project. And they're in agreement with the items to be added also. So the cost related to those is $36,995.31. There's a long lead time for some of the items. I have asked the contractor in anticipation of an award to be able to get us the submittals on that, so we're ready to go. And then finally, there's a change order for the reinstall on the ceiling. That was the price presented by the contractor. I'll defer to Phil if he wants to comment anything on that. And those three change orders are on the agenda tonight. I feel confident with those approvals, or the approval of the commission. We can finally get this project going forward to completion. If there's any questions, I'm glad to answer them. Unfortunately, just a preliminary schedule that I put together related to the completion of the project. It's going to take some time to get in some of the materials. The contractor has positioned us in his schedule to start when materials come in and as soon as we can get on their schedule. So the mechanical improvements are going to take us through the end of the year. We have to complete some balancing and checking of the entire mechanical system prior to ceiling installation. Ceiling installation goes up, and then we are hopefully to completion. We will do sound testing and bring the project to completion.
Estimated date?
I have right now estimated date of completion is somewhere at the beginning of February.
Thank you.
So you with that delay on the mechanical improvements, you're still sticking by that early February sound test?
And
Yeah, the contractor got back to me with availability of their crew, and they felt they could get going with the duct work. In the meantime, they could order the mechanical system. So they've been very, very cooperative and helpful. So I'm confident on their end. It's going to be a matter of scheduling with the ceiling reinstallation, which I'm hopeful that that's a 1 month operation in my mind, no more. So we just have to get that worked out with Phil's help with that contractor and have the timing worked out on that.
All right, I was gonna say just one thing, just to be clear on this. These change orders are designed to get the range functional. We are seeking to have those costs reimbursed from the party.
I think it's important to go ahead with it. Our police need to be able to have close by training, so.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you for that presentation. Next on the agenda, the consent order compliance. In cast of characters.
I know we're adding one.
All right.
Good to see you all. We're here to discuss sanitary sewers again, and specifically the consent order where we stand currently. One of the big things that we've been working towards is the projects.
We have completed a number of smaller projects along the way, but this is one of the first. We're calling it the phase one set of projects associated with the consent order because they are larger in nature and working specifically to get us to that goal of meeting the Gold Line standard. So we'll go through briefly the background again, just as get everybody back up to speed in terms of the requirements and the timeline in order to meet that. What we have done so far, and then we'll review those proposed repairs and some of the next steps to consider. So I believe the memo was already provided in your packet, which outlines the projects as well as the consent order requirements. If you recall, there are 17 point of connections in Mount Lebanon because we are at the top of the system and flow in a number of different directions. Most municipalities only have 5 or fewer. So Mount Lebanon is interesting in that case. With that, there are 7 of those point of connections above the threshold, and 2 which are tributary to an SSO or a sanitary sewer overflow. With that, those 2 that are tributary will require just an elimination plan, which needs to be provided and submitted by the end of this year. That's being worked on as a multi-municipal effort, and those projects are not anticipated to be in the near future for the sanitary sewer overflow eliminations. But that is a requirement of this order, at least to develop that plan with a projected timeline for when that'll be completed. That would include most likely some larger projects to eliminate those overflows. But what we are required to perform is the reduction of the sanitary sewer overflows or reduction of the source flow associated with the system, essentially reducing I&I infiltration, which is making its way into the sanitary system. This is an overall view of those point of connections. The red and purple are actually sheds, which are above that threshold. You have the tabular format of that as well, showing those sheds. The timeline that was originally established, as I mentioned, the sanitary sewer overflow elimination plan alternative analysis, that's the next big deadline, which is required by the end of this year. And we are working on that currently. The SFRP or source flow reduction projects, that is the following deadline after that. That's anticipated for September of 2024 for when those should be designed. What we have done, Mount Lebanon's been very proactive along the way. A lot of lining work has been completed year in, year out. Anything that has been completed since the signing of the order, we anticipate taking credit for towards those reductions. And then we are also taking this first step of construction. You can see the construction timeline for all municipalities that are in the consent order is to be performed by the end of 2025. So they give everybody that timeline of essentially January 1st, 2025 to the end of 2025. So that's when all municipalities are going to be looking for contractors to perform this work. So that's one of the main goals here, is to try to stay out ahead of that and complete these phase 1 projects before everybody else is looking for a contractor. Like I've mentioned, lining is completed on a year in, year out basis. Primarily, we've done that in order to repair defects, but also proactively have tried to identify I know one of Rudy's main goals is to just line the entire system, essentially to the 100-plus-year-old system in some cases. So essentially to get it updated overall is the goal. And that has been helping to eliminate or reduce that I&I along the way. Municipality has been very successful with grow grants that have been offered by Alcosan. To this point, Mount Lebanon has received 10 grow grants, and there are 2 that are anticipated that are in the works currently. We hope to hear on those within the next month or so. And And then they will be starting the next round as well, and we'll have discussions to include for the next phase of projects for additional grants at that time. In order to identify those areas or those hotspots, because as I showed that map previously, that showed the very large areas that were red or over that threshold. We performed flow isolation, which is trying to identify smaller pockets that are tributary to that high INI. And by doing that, we can reduce the size of the project instead of lining the entire municipality in one fell swoop, to line the areas that are most tributary to that additional flow. So this phase one piece is really trying to hit some of that low hanging fruit that has been identified over the years. One other aspect that was performed was performing CCTV explicitly to identify infiltration. So looking at that flow isolation results, performing televising of those sewers in those locations to pinpoint the infiltration defects that could be repaired and could reduce that INI. And then some of the other things that continue to be worked on, I think last time I was here to discuss with you, it was about regionalization. And you guys did pass the resolution for that. That process is moving forward. One of the key aspects there are these larger trunk lines, which have been known to have significant infiltration, but also that is the location of those overflows. So with that regionalization, those lines would be provided over to Alcosan. That won't have a direct effect on this specific order, but on the next order, which is anticipated to be discussed in 2027 and moving forward. By that point, we would hope that that regionalization is performed and those lines are now Alcosan's lines instead of Mount Lebanon's lines. And then multi-municipal coordination has been a large piece of this too. Again, being at the top of the system, we flow into a number of municipalities. So we continue to work with those neighboring municipalities to try to identify either joint projects or to work together to identify ways in order to efficiently reduce the INI. Get into these phase one projects that we're discussing currently. And we gave names that are roughly the location, also in the sheds, sewer sheds where they currently are. So the Castle Shannon Boulevard repair, it is for lining about 5,391 feet of sewer. This was identified in our recent flow isolation. As you can see, it was significantly over the threshold, 5,296 GPIMD, gallons per inch mile day. That's the metric that's used. And our goal is to meet that threshold requirement of 4,179. Now, these are considered phase one projects because these are just the larger low hanging fruit. This may not get us the entire way to that threshold. And that's just one point I like to stress too, because we are looking at this very conservatively, as a lining repair is typically considered to remove about 30% of the INI within that line. So that 30% is just within that line. We all know that there's the public and private discussion, but this order does not kind of reflect on that private side of things. So we are just looking at the public portion in terms of these projects. So all of these projects are anticipated to get us a good way towards that. But like I said, these are the phase one anticipated projects.
How long does the lining last?
So lining is typically considered to be in that 50 to 75 year range. So it is like constructing a new line. Yeah, and it does become a line with or a pipe within the pipe.
Right.
And John
Provides structural value as well, so it
protects the clay line or whatever it is.
And that the clay line actually protects that even too, because then you don't have the outside influence you have with a regular pump, with a clay pipe that's there.
And it helps the flow, because there's less drag once that lining is.
Yes.
Yeah, and specifically with infiltration, a clay pipe typically has a joint every 3 feet.
Right, sure.
With manhole to manhole lining, that eliminates all
the
those joints.
Sure.
You do still have lateral connections and everything else, but there's other alternatives that we'll look at in the final design of this too, where it might even be something with those laterals to further seal that connection point as well.
Thanks.
Just a quick map here showing the relative locations that are proposed. The next one is Scott Road, Pennsylvania Boulevard. This specific project is estimated at about $766,000.
How much was the last one? I didn't see
Um,
the figure on it.
Sorry, I did not put that.
Oh, okay, that's.
I have it at the end. so
Okay,
do
that's all I
have
was
some-
gonna, I'll wait for the end. I'm just
Yeah.
like, how much is it gonna cost? That's kind of where my mind goes.
I'm saving that for the big finale.
Okay, good. I'll hang on.
So, the next one, Scott Road, Pennsylvania Boulevard. This is a much larger area. Again, much larger I currently with the GPIMD of 5,529. A little over 6,000 or close to 7,000 lineal feet of pipelining. Again, identified from flow isolation monitoring. This project's estimated to remove about 20 million gallons per year. Sounds like a lot, but again, that is only estimated to get us a part of the way there.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, the 30% removal is the low end removal. We are looking at ways to increase that. Sometimes you could get anywhere from 30 to 70%. And at this point, the regulatory agencies have stated it's not necessarily that if you do your post monitoring after the fact that you haven't met that threshold, that they're gonna, slap your wrist or give you a fine or anything like that. It is mainly about designing for your best chance to get there, because they understand that it is very difficult to reduce INI. But Mount Lebanon has shown that they've gone to great extents to do the work. We're jumping out early to try to kind of work our way there. And we do hope by doing this and doing this in phases even that we can get more out of it at the end of the day. As you can see, it's kind of along a main seam there, and oftentimes this initial low hanging fruit is near streams or kind of a low lying area where we can anticipate to get a little bit more out of the system. And you'll see with each one of these, they do have a grow ID. So with that, the first two that I discussed, we already do have a grow grant that has been approved by Alcosan. So a portion of that fund would be costs would be reimbursed. I do have that at the end as well. These next two that I'm going to discuss are the two that are currently under application with Alcosan, but they are in sheds where we need to do this work kind of regardless. We need to start making our way there. So hopefully it is awarded in the coming months. And this one does have a cost of $849,000. And I'll like I said, I'll dig into the costs a little bit further. This does include both lining and manhole rehabilitation, which is why the cost is slightly higher. We believe, and especially where we've identified some issues with manholes, that we can get a little bit more out of the system, but that tends to be a little bit harder to estimate how much removal you're going to get from a manhole structure. The manhole to manhole lining is the typical means of repair that is accepted by the region, and there's a little bit more information around that. Manhole to manhole lining, we're hoping to explicitly identify infiltration defects that are visible that will or the manhole rehabilitation that will be repaired. Again, here this was 5,050 GPIMD, and we're looking to get to that threshold of 4,109. Bottom map give you location. This was considered the Larchmont Cochrane Road repair. And the last one of this initial phase is the Little Sawmill Run repair. It was about 9,400 lineal feet of sewer. So this is one of our largest point of connections that we're dealing with. And that's why we have as much manhole lining that we have proposed, and actually anticipating a little over 50 manholes to be rehabilitated as part of this. Now, again, the municipality has been performing manhole rehabilitation over the years, so this would just be looking at either ones that have been done so long ago that maybe it was using a different technology that was not as effective, or ones that have not been hit yet, so we'd be reprioritizing those. Estimated at about 12.6 million. Yeah. The shed is, this is where the lining's being completed. The sheds that's shown there is actually a flow isolation shed. That showed to be one of the worst, and that's why we're lining the majority of pipes within that system. And this is the overall list of the anticipated expected costs. With that, again, this is the first step, so there are expected to be additional larger projects, and we are working to identify and pinpoint those so we could be as efficient as possible with those future projects. The reason why we're talking about this separately from the lining project or the manhole rehabilitation projects that we do currently is because in order to attract larger contractors to the region, again, trying to get out in front before all those contractors are here, kind of in the following years when all the municipalities are looking for it, but also so that we can kind of build the contract around this. One item that you have to complete typically with this is metering and some other items that, you know, typical lining contractor is not as familiar with. So we can build the contract so that the contractor owns that metering that will be performed. And that way that contract covers everything instead of using 2 or more contractors to do to try to get to that one goal.
I didn't quite follow this. This is what I thought I heard, that you are hoping to get out in front so you can attract maybe some bigger contractors that have the ability to build in metering as well as doing the lining.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And I would assume that would keep the bid prices perhaps down further, just because we're not as much competition at this point.
Not as much competition. These are also larger projects than what we bid too. So with that, the kind of efficiency of scale, we would hope to get some better prices there too. But just another piece was, you know, when it was just the municipality that was responsible for the metering after the fact, a lot of times it's chasing that contractor for that one last repair.
I got it.
In this case, the contractor would be responsible for any of those costs associated with metering, so that it's on them if they're struggling to get that last repair done or whatever it may be.
Okay, understood, thanks.
When I had a couple questions, when we did the flow monitoring, we had an additional exhibit and we went back to them with what we believed were actually lower numbers. Were those numbers accepted as the final numbers that we were going to be held to?
So at this point, the regulatory agencies did at least state that they had received it. We are waiting and accepted our baseline due diligence report. Three Rivers Wet Weather is acting on behalf of the regulatory agencies to resubmit those. We have not received the final one, but at this point, based on the correspondence that we received, we are working towards that. Those were accepted.
Okay. And then are there requirements so the calculations that go along with that, when this work is done, so we submit the source flow reduction plan and you submit the areas where we believe there's high I&I and our plan addresses that. Are we held to post-project completion metering to confirm those calculations?
That's actually 2026, that timeline that I showed at the beginning, 2026, you have to perform metering across the region to reset where you stand at that point.
So assuming we get these projects done and we put metering in place, you're saying the way you're proposing the structure, the contractors would own the metering that they put in place?
In the sense that we wouldn't want to pay for a meter sitting there waiting for a contractor to complete. So we would build it into the contract that they would own the cost of the meter.
I understand, okay.
It's like an incentive to keep them moving to get it done.
Yeah, sure,
Got
that
it.
makes sense.
It's a little
Confusing.
Yes.
So money, $2.5 million. Where is that coming from?
Actually, I have another question for
Oh, sorry.
that, for that money.
Sure.
So all of the items that were read under the new numbers, which were fewer than the old numbers, there were a couple that those new flow numbers take us out of that, right? So, and then I didn't see if these matched up with those B items, but I'm assuming they do. But do the new numbers get us to that gold mine standard with the projects that you're proposing?
So what I provided, those are the new numbers.
Right.
And these projects are anticipated to get us certain portion. What we want to do is try to get to that 70% potentially. 70% would be the most that you're getting out of that specific pipe. Just because you remove it from one spot, it tends to make its way back in. In some of these cases, we're going to get very close, but that's another reason for doing it earlier. We can better, we can do the post monitoring and identify. Again, we're not necessarily being judged based on the results. But at the same time, the next order is just going to, reset the
Sure.
stage and probably move that gold line standard down. So
Right.
we're gonna continually work towards that.
Okay.
But I do want to caution that, even if we decide to be most conservative and only 30% reductions in all cases, then the numbers could start to escalate when we're talking about this. It's just a portion. We could be talking about $10 million for future projects. So that's kind of the balance that we're gonna have to look at, whether or not we want to anticipate a larger reduction by pinpointing those areas of source flow or the areas of I&I.
So that was my next question. So in the text, in one of the slides, you wrote I&I in the area, which I assume to be broader than just where you tested. So were we able to pinpoint where some of that I&I is coming from? Meaning like, we know it's getting into the system from stuff that we don't control.
Yeah.
So like, how much of that were we actually able to pinpoint? Because that's kind of the basis of the other recommendation of the consent order, which is to put things in place for covering private laterals and things like that, which we stopped short of, which we should do, but we stopped short of.
And the way that the order was set up was that was only an option if some of these municipalities only have 2-point connections instead of 17 points. If those 2-point connections were not over the threshold, then that was an option.
Yeah.
They wanted everybody to do something. But that has not been identified, the point of sale lateral ordinance, as a direct, this is how much you're gonna remove from it, because it's all based on how often the turnover is and whether or not you're really finding everything. So what we're doing is not necessarily identifying that, but the results of what we're doing are gonna help identify that. If you manhole line an entire area that was high, you do your post monitoring and you find out, that's still high, then you may be identifying that that's more of a private issue than a public issue in that specific place. One other thing that I talked to Keith about actually earlier today, and talking with Dave Montz from Three Roof Wet Weather, he's reaching out to PA American Water to see if they could do some sound testing, finding out where they may have leaks within their system. Because that can be identified as another source of I&I if there's significant leaks within the water lines that typically share a trench with sanitary lines in a lot of cases.
What's the reality of them actually doing that? It's like,
slipping on.
That's a good
I think
question.
they probably will make some effort solely because that's unmetered water. So if they have the ability to, depending on what the cost benefit is, come out and make that
Yeah.
repair and then be able to collect
Mhm.
for that water. But I will tell you that It'll be a process, I'll just say that.
Yeah, the number, Keith, can you guys hear me? This is Dan. Hey, I just wanted to interject, just on that water issue. The numbers are staggering how much water they lose in in their system. But just to give a little more of an overview to try to stay focused, you can get lost in a lot of this stuff, but essentially where we are right now with the consent order, we're ahead of the game. We have big projects to do. Dennis is focused in on this low-hanging fruit that we know we have to do and is going to be beneficial. We're going to get some results from this that are going to help guide us going forward a little bit further. But I think that the two elements that are most important are that we get out, get a contractor in here on a large scale project, because the number of lining contractors in the Pittsburgh area are very limited. I've not seen many contractors come in from out of state recently. It'll be interesting to see as the consent order ramps up if they do that. But they do provide some additional competition that is helpful. And I think it's important for us to get out and test the environment, the bidding environment, number one. Be ahead of that is important. And then that also allows Dennis to focus in on the balance of meeting the Gold Line standard by sort of pinpointing that 20% of the system that's providing that 80% of the infiltration. So he's going to be spending more time using all the data he has, some analytics and other things that we can do to help further, guide us to the point where we know and we can pinpoint these other projects. So I just felt that it was important to get in front of the commission. We've been saying these big projects are coming for a while. These are the first ones to really hit us in a big capacity other than normal maintenance. So that's just my 10 cents.
That's a quick clarification question. In your memo, you mentioned Hope Hollow up there. You talked about Cocker Road, Larch Pond. I assume same thing.
Yes, yeah, Hope Hollow is the larger shed.
Okay.
That specific project, to kind of pinpoint it, we just identified it as Cochran Large Pond.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question for Andrew, where does the funding come from for any of these projects?
Sanitary sewer fund.
And then what's the status of
Is
that?
it loud enough so the audience could hear sanitary sewer fund?
What's the status of just looking at these numbers and where we're at with the balance of the fund?
We have over $12.5 million.
Okay, so we're good.
$12.5 million in that fund. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I know just from watching these, he's saying something back here. people don't
Yeah, that's
always
fine,
hear
yeah.
it.
Very
All
nice.
right. Any other questions? On
Indy
this
had one
topic?
about the actual fees.
12, yeah, where's the money gonna come from?
I think that's-
Yeah, 12.5 million.
Right.
Yeah, like 12.5 million.
Yeah,
We haven't raised that fee, the sewer fee, in anticipation of these things for the 10 years I've been here.
Okay.
It hasn't been touched, so the fee increases that people see in their sewage bills is all from Alcoasand.
Yeah.
It's all the sewage processing issues that they've been trying to deal with themselves with the consent order, so. But on our end, we've never raised the fee in at least 10 years, and we could go back, I don't know how long it's been. But it's been quite a long time since we've raised it, so it's just been accumulating, waiting for projects like this to
So
come.
we're ready to go.
We're ready to go.
You're just, this is FYI, we don't have to find the money. Like this kind of.
But I mean,
I know.
that's a little different. We've been having conversations about the stormwater fee, which is different. People, because I don't know, I'm sure there are people who don't understand the difference between that, or they get confused between one or the other, they just need to dig in a little on that.
two separate funds.
Right.
All right, any other questions on this topic?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the presentation. Next on the agenda, boards and authorities updates. Who wants to go first?
No, you go ahead.
All right, couple quick one. HPB, Historic Preservation Board met, and they're moving along really well with summarizing their main duties and responsibilities and met the deadline to turn those in. So we have that information moving forward. We talked a lot about the brick streets policy that the commission passed, and their one area of feedback is they're still not clear how and what the public process is. They feel like the policy doesn't spell that out enough for the residents, and then in reality, when the street is up for consideration to be reconstructed as brick, who is informing the residents and when? So I asked the Historic Preservation Board to make some recommendations and to write them up and talk amongst themselves in a subcommittee about what they would like to see, like what that would look like from their perspective. And then when I have that information, I'll share that with the rest of the group.
All right, thank you.
And then the ESB also met, Environmental Sustainability Board. They were happy, Historic Preservation Board was also happy that we passed the policy. Happy that we are committing to preserve. That was the general sentiment across the board. I just talked about the action items that we may have in the future from that, but
Thank you for underlining the.
yeah.
Thank you.
They're happy. And ESB was also happy that we passed a sidewalk policy, but they have two concerns that they wanted to raise. One is that the 100% threshold required is probably still too high and won't result in a lot of sidewalks being implemented in this policy. And the second one is a request to make the cost sharing more clear so that when they're trying to shop it around to their residents, they can say something like, it's gonna cost everyone $250 or whatever. So no real action item there, just information to pass on if we want to consider it as the policy's passed. I know we have some residents that are interested in trying to use it. Things to be aware of. Let's see, my opinion is let's see how it goes. But we may want to tweak it like we do all policies.
Thank you for the feedback. Commissioner Spark, unless you're not.
I'm done.
Commissioner Sparkles.
Library. The library board met last week, I think it was. I lose track of my weeks. This is the last week of the challenge, Love Your Library, where any money you donate gets matched. So I'm sure all commission members are willing and happy to support our library. Yep. Also the work around the library, all of the new, concrete is in and looking nice, and the new lockers are in. Everything is going swimmingly well. It's well run, as we all know, and doing well. CRB.
Unfortunately, the elevator going out.
I forgot. I'm sorry. The elevator went out of
Unfortunately,
service.
for how long?
8 weeks.
We're looking about 2 months.
Yeah, about 8 weeks.
So-
I mean, that's the estimate they're telling us, so maybe add.
Yeah.
time.
So.
It's gonna hit right around the holidays if everything goes well.
So we moved all the book drop off upstairs, so.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot that. The Community Relations Board, their most recent meeting, Chief Haberman came and spoke to the board about the process that the police department uses when complaints are made. It was very well received. The very next day, I think it was, we had coffee with a cop, maybe it was 2 days later, but that also was a terrific meeting. Lots of public there, lots of policemen there, free
Any
coffee.
guess how many residents were?
No clue,
Okay.
no clue. Laura probably has a better idea than I do.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was really well, it was very good. The chief is really right on top of how to deal well with the public. And of course, Manager McGill backs him up, and they really do a tremendous job of answering questions and being open, being transparent. It's really a compliment. MRTSA meets tomorrow. We are looking at budgets and all that good stuff, the ambulances. MRTSA's biggest challenge is being able to recoup the costs when they send out a truck to save somebody.
Yeah.
It's difficult to fight insurance in this current atmosphere. Medicare has a set ceiling on how much they will pay, which is below what it costs us to send. And we have equipment coming up that needs to be replaced. So those challenges remain. They are very dependent upon the municipalities to give part of their tax revenues to fund MRTSA. And it's a problem statewide. So it's not just what we're going through, but others as well.
And having said all that, at least the hope, the plan is that at least municipal contribution towards MRTSA should be level
Yes.
from last year to this year, or this year to next, depending on how you're scoring the budget, but at least there should not be an increase in that which we have to fund to MRTSA. We'll review our budget November, December. Anything else?
That's it. Thanks.
Commissioner Grella, anything?
The new superintendent of the school district is reviewing the curriculum. doing an overview there and working on implementing some new programs. And they're also looking to hire an additional superintendent to replace the second superintendent who left. So that search is ongoing.
And I saw something, there's a business roundtable with the superintendent coming up. Eric is not here with the date, but there was.
I'll get you the date. It's in October.
Yeah. All right, Commissioner Flynn, anything?
Just a reminder that the artist market
Yeah.
is this weekend and the partnership is ramping up for it. It's gonna be exciting.
Right, right. Historical Society has their fundraiser Thursday evening, October fifth at the History Center. It also includes an online auction of goods and services, so please attend and bid and we will love the
Got my
support for
tickets.
the, yes, exactly, so good stuff. All right, with that, we are adjourned. See you in the big room.
Yeah.